many times in our lives there is that place of surrender, and it is darn cold. All right, there's some buttons here. There we go. What a beautiful song. I want to just thank our Friday night. We had the most amazing love feast, and Marty and Karen and Warren were fantastic volunteers, and Tracy, my co-chair. Wow, we just had a lot of fun and laughter and a lot of love. Today I'm going to share a fairy tale with you. It's about a life well lived, where our heroine was trapped in her home, family home, for 25 years. The three-year-old Sueva Catani, I'll get this all right, was brought to Vernon, BC by her father Leonie Catani and her mother Ophelia, who was her father's mistress, and her mother's companion, Miss Jewel, in 1920. The Catanis were a powerful and very wealthy, noble Italian family. And with historical records, they actually had two popes in their history. One was in the 10th century and one was in the 13th century. So there was a long lineage in this family. And many of the family members over the years centuries really, had been scholars, writers, statesmen, and artists. Leonie disagreed with the politics of the time in Italy in the 20s, and Mussolini was taking over in power. And so he had come to British Columbia as a young man and decided that that was a place he would like to take his family. So his decision was made, and he moved his family to, oh, I forgot my pointer. Pat, would you mind passing that to me? So Sueva led a very sheltered life. She was doted on by her family, by her mom and dad. She was like a princess to them. In Vernon, they kept to themselves, but they did travel extensively for a number of years. They went to New York. They rented a whole floor of the hotel for a month. What is it? I don't know, I can't remember the name of it. And they went to Paris and Rome. She was tutored by English governesses. She went to private school in British Columbia. And at the age of 12, she spent a year in Monte Carlo being tutored in art. And it was a lavish lifestyle that they were living, but called Vernon home. And prior to coming to Canada, Leonie had sold off most of his holdings and had invested in the stock market. So along comes 1929. We all know what happened. The stock market crashed, and essentially that was the end of their lavish lifestyle. He had purchased a 6,000 square foot home in Vernon and an orchard, and so he was managing the family farm and loved that lifestyle. Sueva was 18 when her father suddenly died of cancer on Christmas Day at 66 years old. This was the catalyst that changed everything in her life. Her mother, Ophelia, had been a young, high society young woman when she fell in love with Leonie, but the decision to come to Canada was his and his only. And she had never learned English in her time there, and when they stopped traveling, she became extremely lonely. And upon his death, she never left her home again. And she was so afraid that Sueva would abandon her as well that she forbade her to leave the house. And along with their companion, they stayed there for 25 years, declaring that she would die if Sueva ever left her. Ophelia became obsessed with cleanliness, and Sueva was actually a true Cinderella, spending every day washing all the sheets in the house and ironing them and putting them back on and cleaning the house. They removed all the curtains in the house and even the lampshades because she didn't want the dust. She wasn't allowed any friends, and she wasn't allowed to do her art. In fact, Ophelia had destroyed some of her paintings. And they stayed in the home from 1935 until Ophelia's death in 1960. Sueva was 43 years old, 25 years hostage in her own home. She was virtually penniless at the time of her mother's passing. The home in Vernon was bestowed to her by her father upon his passing, so she did have that. But her mother gave her remaining possessions in her house in Italy to the Catholic Church. Yet, Sueva was now finally free from her obligation to her mother, and so she immediately began to create this new life for herself. She learned to drive, she joined some clubs, she got many, many friends. She took up teaching at a local Catholic school, and she actually went to university in Victoria and became a secondary school teacher. In her 50s, she took up painting again, and she began and created her legacy, Recapitulation. It was a journey of her life and a series of 56 paintings. Some of them were 6 feet in diameter. She painted every morning for 2 or 3 hours before going to school to teach, and then she came home and painted late into the night. Some paintings had 15 or 20 layers of paint on them, taking months to finish each one. And near the end, she was confined to a wheelchair, and she still continued to paint. And when the arthritis took away her abilities to paint with her hands, she started doing poetry and writing excerpts to explain what her paintings were about. She transitioned in 1994 at the age of 76. She bequeathed her home to the city of Vernon, and her art was sent here in Alberta to the Alberta Foundation for the Arts, which is located in Edmonton. Sueva's story struck me when I recently heard snippets of it on CBC. Actually, I was running a little bit late on the way to church. And I wanted to stay in the car and listen, but I knew I wanted to be here too. Thank goodness internet has replay. Anyways, I had no idea this was a part of our Canadian history. In fact, I had lived in Kelowna, 40 kilometers away from Vernon, for 18 years. I moved there in 1994, a year after she passed. So it was amazing. But mostly what struck me about Sueva was her transformation once her mother died. She really took her second chance at life and blossomed into a wonderful artist, a teacher, a friend. While she never married or had children, yet her life, her passion, and her healing inspired many people. Her home now is the Kitani Cultural Center in Vernon, BC, where artists, musicians, performers, and cultural researchers are able to stay there for a period of time and use the space to encourage, inspire, and create art and opportunities for arts in the Vernon area. And here's a slide of some of her work that she did, and very, very beautiful. And that's what we're learning here as students of the science of mind philosophy. To thy own self be true. And that's why I wanted to talk today about the 3 R's of self-love. Before Dr. Talk, that's really good. Before Dr. Pat's talk last week about love and radiating that love out, and our wonderful love feast on Friday, I had my heart set upon sharing a little bit of my journey of self-discovery and self-love. And I believe, thanks to Louise Hay, she's a great metaphysician here, part of our teaching, that this journey all begins with self-love. My starting journey in this foray of self-love began when I was a new wife, a new mom, and newly sober. I was desperately unhappy with myself and my life. I had done so many things in my life that I was deeply ashamed of as an alcoholic, and I didn't know how to cope with feelings now that I had no booze and no smokes and nothing. So I was seeing a counselor at this time, and as homework, she had assigned me a simple task of make a list of 10 things that I liked about myself. Easy, right? No, it was not easy for me. The morning of my next session, I'm like in the bathroom, and I'm like, what do I like about myself? I just had no idea. There wasn't, and I can't really describe it today, but it was like just this like, I just had nothing. So I was looking down and then I was like, oh, I like my wrists. I'd always liked my wrists. And I was like, wow, yeah, I like something about myself. I had one thing that I could say that I liked. They were pretty, they were slender, and they were really nice. And I got to wear small jewelry. So that was the aha moment for me. And I realized that there was one thing that I really did like. How many here have had that feeling of self-loathing? Okay, yeah, 2 of us. How many have no idea how they feel about themselves? Okay. So the first R in self-love is replacing. Replacing those false ideas about ourselves with the truth of who we really are. I discovered as I began to do this self-reflection that I had been subject to many, many beliefs about myself. Some were for me, like, there's nothing to like about me. And some were from others, family, teachers, society, those race consciousness things that just become embedded in us. They were worn out beliefs. I'm not okay, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm too lazy. What are some of those false beliefs that you've changed about yourself or are still working on? Are you stuck in survival mode, fear and worry? I can't pay these bills. I hate what I do. I hate myself. I hate my life. Sometimes we don't even know that that's going on. It's kind of like an underground kind of cesspool that's going on inside of ourselves. But I knew that I needed to replace these old ideas. And it started that morning in that bathroom. And I was cracking that shield of protection, cracking the ego, and the light was beginning to shine through those cracks. Replacing old ideas with new ideas. I began to see life through the eyes of my children. They were so precious, and I had a new idea. I must have been as precious as that when I was a child. And that was really a new idea for me. And I began to look at how wonderful 3-year-old children are. They're so cute. They know they're great, right? Who hasn't seen a 3-year-old and say, oh, you're so cute? Yes, I am. And when they scrape their knee, they just fall down, have a little cry, get up, and on to the day to be playing, enjoying their lives. I wanted to live like that. The more I was able to notice my old beliefs and began practicing replacing those old ideas with these new ideas, I found that I was moving into that new R, the next R of self-love, restoring. I was restoring myself to my natural self. And this is what our founder, Ernest Holmes, says. That there is in me which all people recognize as worthwhile and desirable. And everyone whom I meet loves this self of mine and recognizes its worth. I know the truth makes me free from the fear of poverty or bondage and emancipates me from the thought of limitation. Ernest Holmes. I knew that I was changing when I had a wonderful experience with my mother. I had always longed for her recognition. I needed it. Do you get this? I needed it. The more I needed it, the more I got that feeling of neediness. Anyone here heard of the law of attraction? Oh my God, feeling needy. What did I get? More? Yes. It was awful. I felt that I had to have people to be okay. Neediness was a common theme in my life. I needed the ocean. Janine knows we live by the ocean. I needed that to be okay. I needed to smoke every day. I needed to have a man to be okay. That's a whole nother story. I needed something to take away this pain, the inner pain that was inside of me. So this day with my mother arrived. I had joined an art collective in Vancouver, and we were having our very first art show. It was fantastic. It was exciting for me. Opening night was in full swing, and I was happily chatting with friends and sharing in the fun of showing my artwork along with other artists. And then suddenly there was this tug on my arm, and it was my mom, and she was asking me, she's like, "Did you write that? Did you write that in your booklet?" And I'm like, yes. I didn't know what to expect. And she's like, "I liked it. I really liked it. It's great." And I was thrilled to receive my recognition from my mother. But I instantly knew that I no longer needed it. Something had shifted within me. I was in love with my life. I loved where I was, I loved my mother, and I no longer was holding her hostage to my neediness. And it was a beautiful, brilliant breakthrough. What freedom I experienced in that moment. Another level of the restoration of my spirit, my inner self, my love was growing for me. How many have noticed when we begin this journey of self-discovery that the layers just keep coming? And some of them just seem to be a little bit more complicated than the last layer. Would you agree with me? Yeah. So one of my deeper dives into the inner landscape of Lesley was during my practitioner training. It's hard to stay in your old belief systems when you're training to become a practitioner. Anybody agree with that over in that corner? That's where they all sit. We had weekly classes, and I was finally forced to meditate on a regular basis. What? Like every day. I knew meditation was really good for you guys, but it wasn't for me. Because I knew deep down in the black hole inside of me, there was monsters, big monsters. And I had spent my lifetime trying to get away from them. And I would finally find out why I was really a lousy person. And honestly, I was really scared. And that's the truth. I was super scared to do that activity. Thankfully, I'm a keener, and I do as I told, and I trusted my teachers, and I was trusting in the process. And I began that practice of daily meditation. And after a short while, I discovered that actually there were no monsters inside of me. What I discovered was a light, a beautiful sanctuary of love, connection, power, calm, peace. Really, it is a peace of beyond all understanding. There was this delicious inner landscape of me, of spirit and I in connection. Like Ron's beautiful meditation this morning, the I am. I had found my source. So Ernest Holmes says, "The real self is God-given, and it cannot be denied. It is the place where God comes to a point of individualized and personified expression. I am the light of the world." Individuality means self-choice, volition, conscious mind, personified spirit, complete freedom, and a power to back up that freedom. There could not be a mechanical or unspontaneous individuality. Individuality must be created in the image of perfection, and let alone to make this stupendous discovery for itself. This stupendous discovery of self-love. And this is what I call the third R of love, revealing the truth. While Sueva was in a physical prison of her mother's making, unable to express herself or live her life, captive to another, held there by her beliefs that she had to care for her mom, She was finally able to free herself from that physical bondage and begin the stupendous discovery of her self-choice, of her perfection. I was in an emotional prison. I was hostage to my own self-imposed limitations. I couldn't see past my neediness, the feelings of insecurity, being afraid of my shame and my guilt and all of that. Through this teaching and my personal research, I've been able to truly let go of those externals that pulled me apart. Not today. Today, it's a great day. I love what I'm doing. I love who I am. Now, I follow a chap online, Mike Dooley. He writes notes to the universe. Anybody know of him? Yes, several of you, lots of us. It's a weekday love note from the universe that he sends out, and he's really brilliant, and I love what his notes say. About 10 years ago, Patrick and I, my son, traveled to Vancouver to see Mike in person, and it was fabulous. And one of the ideas Mike had that stood out for me was his invitation to the audience to change our mind about photos. He talked about how every time he saw a picture of himself, he would cringe and he would immediately criticize it. He didn't like his smile, he didn't like his shirt, he didn't like his hair when he had it. There was always something that he would berate himself for in all the pictures he was in. Who does that? Does anybody here do that? No, right? You guys are, no. He decided to change his mind about that and began to say every time he saw himself in a picture, I'm so photogenic. I take great pictures. I look good in pictures. Actually, I look great in pictures. I was guilty of berating myself in pictures too. So right away, I began reprogramming myself. This was another step in my new idea. This was a really good new idea. It was simple. And I began to say those same phrases. I'm so photogenic. I look really good. I like my smile. Even if my first urge was to start that self-criticism, I would stop myself immediately and I would take a good look at the picture until I found the good. I found something to celebrate about it. And guess what? It works. I take great pictures now. Okay, now this is kind of a fun little mini insert. Everybody grab out your cell phones, and I want you to take a selfie of you and the person beside you. Come on. And if you don't have a cell phone, photobomb the person beside you. And then I want you to say, hey, I'm so photogenic. Come on, kids. And dang, I look good. Yeah, that's it. Woohoo! I can't hear you. I am so photogenic. Who's photobombing? Ed and Eleanor, they're photobombing your photos. Okay. That is awesome. Well, that was super fun. Well done, everyone. How did that feel? By the laughter, I could tell it was really fun. Was it awkward, natural? Anybody felt a little weird? Yeah. No? Okay. Playful? Yeah. So, I'd like to have another quote from Ernest Holmes. I think this really sums up what we're talking about here today. We see abundance in the universe. We cannot count the grains of sand on a single beach. The earth contains untold riches, and the very air is vibrant with power. Why then is man weak, poor, and afraid? The science of mind deals with these questions. The divine plan is one of freedom. Bondage is not God ordained. Freedom is the birthright of every living soul. All instinctively feel this. The truth points to freedom under the law. It's love and law. This, the inherent nature of man, is forever seeking to express itself in terms of freedom. We do well to listen to that inner voice, for it tells us of life wonderful in its scope, of a love beyond our fondest dreams, of a freedom which the soul craves. We do well to listen to this inner voice, for it tells us of a life wonderful in its scope, of a love beyond our fondest dreams, of a freedom the soul craves. It is true that as we grow in this teaching, we truly do find freedom. Freedom to be ourselves, to think, to love, to live this wonderful life full of unexpected delights. In summary, love, self-love begins when we begin to replace old ideas or ideas that don't serve us anymore, things we want less of, and restore ourselves to our authentic selves and reveal the wonderment of Spirit who is in us, around us, and through us. The call to action today is for each of us to notice our inner voice, celebrate our good feeling thoughts, and to terminate any of those thoughts that don't feel so good. And let's absolutely raise our self-love vibration and be sure to absolutely say every time you have a picture of yourself, "Dang, I look good." Thank you, I love you, and bless you. Come on up. Thank you. Whoops. More cowbell. I think we should.